Okay, it's time for another episode of the Cole Memo. I am super excited. My guest today, well, it's Livi McKay. We'll be talking to her in just a moment. This will be my first time meeting Livi. Just a heads up, if you're listening to this, um, our website is colememo.com, and if we reference any links during today's episode, I will be sure to put that in the show notes. Without further ado, I'm going to bring on my guest today. Livi, how's it going?
Hi, Cole. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And please go ahead and introduce yourself. Well, to myself, like I said, we're just meeting, but also to my audience. Tell us a little
Of
bit about
course.
yourself.
Of course. So I'm Livi McKay, the CEO and founder of MyTEPI, the creator of the Discover Your Color platform. It's a quality management system servicing the cannabis industry. And so what we do is we basically look at COAs and we translate that for all buyers in the market, from the buyers in the store to from the consumers to the one stocking inventory, to help make more informed and consistent decisions based on the chemistry. So a little bit of science and a lot of consumer navigation. So we serve both sides of the market as far as hemp and medical and rec. It's all the same plant, same chemistry, same consumers.
Awesome, awesome. And tell people where they can find you online.
So I am quite vocal, for better or worse, on X. You can find me at X. That's where I'm the most active. I'm also on LinkedIn, but less active there. You can also go to our website at discoveryourcolor.co, and there's a contact page and everything. So you can also reach out to me there.
Awesome, awesome. Well, what's just for background, where are you from?
So I'm originally from Alabama. You'll hear it
Okay.
in a few words that I say, although I've lived in North Carolina now for the most part since 2017. This is home for me. So I'm in Wilmington on the coast now.
Okay, cool. Very cool. Yeah, there's definitely a lot going on right now in the world of cannabis. Like you just said, I'll display it on my screen right now if people want to follow you on X. I'm displaying that. You can also go to the website at discoveryourcolor.co. And again, I'll put both of those links in the show notes if that makes it easier for our listeners to find that content. So, uh, yeah, what's kind of been on your mind with regard to this subject? I'm curious of your perspective.
Well, sure. And I think it'll help to give a little bit of background
Yeah.
so that it's both personally and professional. So personally, I do have a deep relationship with the plant from a medicinal perspective, but also from a perspective of growing up in Alabama. I was very against cannabis in my youth and in my teenage years. My mother was a district attorney, as specifically for the DEA. That was her specialty. And my father was a physician. So cannabis was a no-go. That was definitely not something that we condoned at all. And I was in an F5 tornado when I was 21. My views started to change a little bit when I was in college, but what really radically changed me was when I was in an F5 tornado and I started having grand mal seizures shortly afterwards. And traditional medicines didn't work. And that's when I turned to actually going on just a holistic diet, going off the medications, working on cannabis, using cannabis, and then went seizure free for 4 years doing that. Kept it very quiet because I was still in cannabis, and then was coming up in banking. So I graduated college, went into banking and in the finance world, and then started having more health issues, which ended me in the hospital for 17 times in 15 months with 5 major operations and the removal of almost all non-vital organs except for my spleen. I still have my spleen. And that also, they declared me an invalid at 26 years old, had me on 90 Percocets a month, benzos in the morning, benzos at night, and roughly about a little under a dozen medications on a daily basis. And by the time I was about 2017, and this was right after my 17th hospitalization, where it was about a month long, something a little bit snapped. And I said, okay, I'm done. I'm either going to be dead or I've got to make something radical. So even though they said I would be on opiates and all of this for the rest of my life, I decided that I was not going to be. And so I got myself an ounce of flour. I put myself into withdrawals, got a whiteboard to kind of to help myself titrate. I did this alone. I don't recommend this at all. But I did get off the hardest opiates in about 10 days, and then got off of all opiates in 2019. So then I was not only able to get back to my financial career, but really advanced in my financial career, made it to Wall Street, had positions in investor relations, business development, and then gone to an investment manager, CB1 Capital. They're fairly well known in the industry. And that's where I started to become a little bit more vocal about my story in cannabis now that, and I'd been quiet about it, but I started to become more vocal because CB1 really backed me in that, in using cannabis medicinally. And then when I, basically in 2020, I really was plagued with this question, which was, how did I replace this many medications with one plant? Like pharmacologically, how did this happen? And so I wanted to figure out, and I thought by answering that question, or at least beginning to answer that question, we could solve a real problem, which was getting the right medicine to the right people. So you could say the right cultivars or the right chemotypes, basically the right cluster of chemicals to the right people, and in what use case. And so fast forward 5 years later, in a very long journey, we've partnered with one of the longest standing physicians in the space. He's been seeing patients cannabis patients specifically since 1998. Between him and one other doctor, they've seen 100,000 cannabis patients together. And he's been studying the plant chemotyping, specifically chemotyping, since 2015. He's published. We have loads and loads of research. His name's Dr. Jean Talleyrand. He's got a research nonprofit. Highly encourage everyone to go see Dr. Talleyrand's work. He's one of the most unsung heroes of the cannabis industry. And so using his research and the desire to answer that question, we developed the Discover Your Color platform, which analyzes, again, the COAs and helps navigate. And so what that led us into was, we were doing this all originated obviously in cannabis. His research originated in Northern California and the Humboldt, Mendocino counties with with a lot of legacy growers, some third generation legacy growers. So this all really started from the cannabis community. But I'm here, as we said from the beginning, in Wilmington, North Carolina. We don't have a medical state. We don't have we don't have a rec program. I've had to buy from the illicit market almost, since I've needed it for over a better part of a decade. But now I'm not having to do that up around 6 months ago. And I've been watching the hemp market since 2018, since the bills. We've been paying attention to the Farm Bill. I tried Delta 8, I tried HHC, I tried all of these things, especially when I couldn't find anything on the illicit market, because it isn't just that easy, especially if you're not a college student, especially if you're, a upstanding woman in her 30s, that, it's not exactly that easy to come by. And so being able to go into the stores, that's what we found. And so then when the THCA conversation started to come around, and since we look at COAs all the time, we were looking at COAs and saying, okay, we know THCA is the plant, but there's still not the effect was different, especially even still to what we could find on the market. And that was about a year ago. So we still weren't really, from a quality management standpoint, we weren't paying attention to the hemp market, because we said, basically, I wouldn't use the product. Like I would use it as a substitute if I didn't have anything, but it wasn't my go-to. And then around June of last year, I saw that at least in Wilmington, the quality matched what I could find on the illicit market. And then the price was still a little bit high. And then around December, the price not only dropped precipitously, but it went way below what I could find, and the quality went way up. And so I said, okay, this has just completely replaced the illicit market here in North Carolina. Like this is now high quality, and it's, and yes, they are shipping it. It is under the Farm Bill, and I am finding out that they're using high-end cultivation techniques to keep it compliant, to keep the Delta 9 down, to make sure that it doesn't test hot on the shelves. Like, so there's a lot of innovation in this space. And so that's why we've turned a lot of attention to it, because it's on a personal level, it was helping me. And then on a professional level, we said chemically, this is the same. These operators, they, you know, this is an industry that needs help. Both need help, both need guidance. But yeah, so this is, we serve both, but we're a bit agnostic. And again, on the home front, I'm obviously a fan of the hemp market because of what it's providing to us now, not hypothetically what it could provide if we get a bill, you know, what I can do right now to treat very real conditions I have that I was normally having to go, you know, again, to the illicit market, which I don't want to do. No one should be forced to do that to get their medicine. So that's my soapbox. That's what I think about what's going on. In a
Yeah.
nutshell.
That's crazy to hear, a perspective from a state that doesn't have any legal option, medical or adult use. And well, you do have a legal option now, and it's called hemp. It's your access to the cannabis plant, and that's super interesting to hear. Like, that's a super interesting story because I'm from Illinois, so we have had a medical program for a while. We've had an adult use program, and in those ways, people have limited access to the cannabis plant. There's a limited number of dispensaries. You can only buy small amounts, and some people that aren't from, like, let's rewind the clock to 2016. If I were saying these things, people would be like, "Oh, there's only a small number of dispensaries, and you can only buy a small amount. Cry me a river." I get it. Maybe I sound a little privileged here, but again, to hear your perspective where you don't have even those limited options, and this federal farm bill basically opened up your access to the cannabis plant, like, that's just a super interesting story to hear, you know?
And I hope that, and thank you for saying that. And I appreciate that when you've had the limited access. And we moved to Las Vegas for a year and a half from 21 and 22 to study the regulated market on the ground level because of how well their regulated tested market is, because they require not just full panel but also cannabinoids and terpenes. So we were able to study that, and that was great. But still, from that perspective, so having lived in that perspective to now the hemp, it's like, which one would I choose from a consumer perspective? Hemp any day of the week, because first off, the affordability is incredible. That's one big thing. I can go down the street and buy a $15 eighth of of decent quality, actually decent quality. And it's kind of stunning. But so you're finding that. And I think it's only going to get cheaper the more that it gets, the more actors that get in, because still a lot of people don't know about this. Like, they don't realize that it's a 1-to-1. This is only the people that are glued in. So I also think that this hemp, it's also less awkward because of all of the stringent, like, we treat cannabis in in regulated states as if it's uranium. You've got a guy with a gun, you gotta give him your license, you gotta give him your firstborn kid, just to walk into the store. I mean, it's a very uncomfortable process, and it's something that people have not wanted to acknowledge. It's not treating the cannabis consumers with respect and dignity. It's treating the operators like they're drug dealers and that they need to be under the gun. It's not treating this industry like it's something that what it is like it is what it is, which is actually bettering. The most majority of people that are using this are getting their lives bettered. And I really misarticulated that very poorly. But what I'm trying to say is that it mostly makes people well. That's what we see. By and large, most people are using this to better the quality of their life, whether that's getting better sleep, relaxing, socializing better. It's helping improve the quality of their life. And as I tell people all the time, you will not find someone that said, I was in a really dark place and alcohol saved my life. You will never find that story, but you find hundreds of stories, maybe thousands of stories of people saying, I was in a really dark place, soldiers, PTSD, rape victims with PTSD, people with horrific traumas going, this plant helped me get through some of the darkest times in my life. You don't have that with alcohol or cigarettes. And so it's a completely different plant. It has, the people that use it have a mostly different relationship with it. It's not a panacea. It's not a cure-all. It's not going to fix all your problems. Like, it's not that. But we have disrespected the consumers and the plants, even on the state regulated side. And I think that if we improve the hemp side with full panel testing, with the regulation, with lighter regulations than what we see in cannabis, still allow for this interstate commerce, allow, yes, someone in Texas to get the best cannabis from the Emerald Triangle, absolutely, and allow this truly competitive market with clear rules that is easy to get into, you'll see the illicit market evaporate. You'll actually, because that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the hemp market deliver what the cannabis market promised it would, but failed to do in the past 10 years.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big points that you made, it's this idea of how we are regulating cannabis and these state legal systems and how that compares to what we've seen with hemp. And like you say, we're treating it like it's uranium. It's not very accessible. Like, I was able to get this product mailed to my door. It's a 50 milligram soda. I've got many others like that. And I think our governor in Illinois was asked almost like 2 years ago, which this is not on him completely, but he was asked like 2 years ago, would you support delivery? And he was like, yes, provided, that it's basically delivered like alcohol. That's not happened. And again, as I started this off with, that's not necessarily his fault. You could maybe put blame or place blame on the legislature for not putting that on his desk, because of course he can't write laws himself. That's, basic civics, right? But I guess my point is that it's a point that you made. It's like, why can't we take some of these great things that everybody does seem to agree on, like cannabis being sold in Total Wine, the accessibility that has come with hemp, and apply that to state legal marijuana, what we've been calling cannabis. Obviously,
Right.
just in case
Right.
people are tuning in, there's no difference. It's all cannabis, but these are two different arbitrary legal terms. And so, yeah, this is where I view this subject and I get a little frustrated. I recently wrote this, and I'll put this in the show notes for people that want to take a deeper dive. It's this article that I wrote on colememo.com called "The Future of Cannabis and Hemp Policy: Taking the Best and Leaving the Rest." And it's this idea of what you're talking about, where there are some really great things that have come out of hemp policy, like
Yes.
being able to get it delivered to your door, or just going to your local grocery store, or not being limited on the amount that you can buy. I know that seems like a small sticking point, but I'm honestly not aware of another legal good. Like, that was a mind melter for me the first time I ever went to a dispensary. I've told this story a few times on the show, but I remember the first time I went to Colorado, I was like, I want an ounce of that. I want some of those edibles. I want some, and the guy cut me off. He's like, whoa, 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 you're already over your purchase limit. And I was like, my purchase limit? I have never heard of a concept of a purchase limit. Like, my purchase limit has always been like the amount of money in my wallet. And it
Right.
goes back to your point of like, why are we regulating this as if it's a dangerous substance? Like, as if I buy too much and all of a sudden people are going to be in danger. It's like, no, like, why can't I buy it in bulk like I do with alcohol?
It's again, if I may,
Yeah.
it's treating. So in Texas, we saw that they said these aren't the lieutenant. I love they're calling Lieutenant Dan, but Lieutenant Dan said these are not good people. These are evil people. Now, that's a heck of a thing to say about 50,000 people in your own state. And I know for a fact that's not true. I know for a fact that there are some extraordinarily good people in Texas that are that are in the hemp market to help get people well, because they themselves got better with the cannabis plant, be that getting off of alcohol, getting off of opioids, whatever there was this detriment, they used cannabis and they got better. And then they got into the game. And you want to call those people evil, and because you didn't fully understand. Now, I do have empathy and sympathy that these legislators did not fully understand the cannabis plant in 2018. I understand that this is an incredibly complex plant, and I say that as that's my company's bread and butter, is looking at the complexity of the plant, and it is incredibly difficult, and we know very little, and the little that we do know is very difficult to get across, to communicate in a way that can be applicable. It's incredibly complex. So I'm not putting them at fault here and saying, wagging my finger at the regulators. But what did happen is laws were passed out of ignorance, and then a market that already existed, which was the illicit market, just became a legal market. You're paying taxes on it. You're treating your people like with dignity. And if you actually listen to the people that are the vast majority of people that are in this industry, they're in this again because of a personal relationship with the plant. Why? Because there are 54 million people that use cannabis in the US alone. It's a staggering number of people. And we still treat, but in legislators' minds and regulators' minds, and some of them, especially in the older generations, they think that it's just this kind of fringe teenage hippie group, and that's all that uses cannabis. And it's like, that's not where we are anymore. Where nearly 20% of the population is using cannabis. This is not fringe. This did go mainstream, and the hemp bill was part of what helped make it go mainstream, because it brought people in through CBD and under the wellness framework. And you're actually seeing that still more and more in the hemp side of things on the hemp operators, is that they lean more into health and wellness. Even if they don't do it at first, they eventually even come around to it. That's what we're experiencing, that we're witnessing that firsthand.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you say, it seems like one of the main talking points against hemp is that this was not the intent of the law. And I always just like to say that the intent is like, that doesn't even really, like, you can point out several laws in which somebody had an intent, like the Patriot Act was, the intent behind that was to make America a safer place. What actually happened? A mass surveillance system was created. Right? Now, we could get into a debate
Yes.
on whether or not that makes America a safer place, but we'll save that for another show. But my thing is, like, intent aside, this is the way the law clearly read. And like you said, if
Mhm.
you understand the cannabis plant, it said that all cannabis with a concentration of delta 9 lower than 0.3%
Correct.
is a descheduled commodity. And the way I like describe this to people, and again, I want to reiterate, people check out my article that I just showed, taking the best and leaving the rest, because I think we'll both agree, and maybe we can talk about this. We could see some improvement to the current structure, but I don't view a ban as an improvement. But again, setting that aside, and we can talk about that again in a little bit. The language was clear, and the way that I kind of put it, and it's kind of funny that these people are in the business now, but if you would have told Cheech and Chong back in the day, like, hey guys, you can have, we can make weed legal for you, but you just need to call it hemp, they'd be like, all right,
All right.
let's do it. What's funny now is that they are literally selling
It's all that they're
hemp
in.
products.
Yeah.
And so it's like, my thing is, like, I just don't understand why we can't. What really has been mind melting for me is the fracture that this has caused in the cannabis community, where it's like, why can't we just take the progress for what it's worth? Or, like I said, take the best and leave the rest. There are I think, some valid complaints, like maybe hemp shouldn't only be subject to a Delta 9 test. Maybe it should be a full panel test, right? And I
Correct.
know that many operators are voluntarily doing full panel tests, but some aren't. And I think it would be nice to mandate, testing, mandate accuracy in labeling, mandate an age gate, what many people call the three pillar approach to cannabis. And just like I say, take the best parts of hemp policy, which, it's so interesting to see legal cannabis operators oppose hemp on one hand, when on the other hand, they're complaining about being in a federally illegal business. They're complaining about not being able to accept credit cards. They're complaining about 280E. And it's like the solution does seem to be hemp because it's a descheduled commodity. You don't have to pay 280E. You can accept credit cards. You can start your business, do interstate business. And it's just like, why can't, it's just so crazy to see people not
It
take the
is.
win, you know?
It is. It is. And I share that with you. Um, that said, because I share that with you, I've thought about this a good bit. So maybe this will help enlighten the frustration.
Yeah.
Maybe this will be helpful. That's the only reason I'll say it. It's because I aim to be helpful. The cannabis operators that have invested so heavily into that framework, into the framework of either limited licenses or expensive licenses, or in heavy compliance and heavy regulation in this, and they are, I know it's, it's sunken cost fallacy, but they are so invested in it. But it's also not up to them entirely. They feel helpless. They've put all of their mind, all of their energy, all of their time into this. They really have. And they, from what I see, they made a political trade. They made the political trade that federal reform would happen faster than it has, that at least something would have gone through and would have enabled their, and actually solidified their framework and their model. And unfortunately for them, that, and honestly the country, because we are dragging on, this is far overdue. I think that's the one thing we can all agree on. I think that's the one unifier, is
Yeah.
that this is long overdue. But they are facing an existential crisis. And I'm not just talking about large operators. I am speaking to operators. It's heartbreaking. On one hand, on the on the hemp side, I'm speaking to operators that are opening up new stores. They're expanding rapidly, and they're doing great. And then on the other hand, I talk to cannabis operators and they're shutting down. Their clients are shutting down. Their stores are going into receivership. Like, it's carnage. And I know that the big guys are staring down, they're staring down a wall, and they're also in an existential crisis, and the government doesn't look like they're coming in to help them. The federal government doesn't look like they're coming in to help them right away. And so I think that with that, and I think that the timing was just, they put all of the eggs in that basket, especially in the Biden. I really believe that they thought in the Biden administration something would go through, something that would move the needle, safe, Schedule 3, something, and it just didn't happen. And so now we're seeing the giant mess. And what very well may happen is that the mess may come to be, they may allow it to just completely fall apart and then say, okay, now we'll clean it up. And so I'm saying this because I hope that that can give some empathy for these guys that are so against hemp and are trying to shut them down. Is they're thinking about their families, they're thinking about their employees, they're thinking about their livelihoods. Like, if we think about them as actual humans, and not just, not a CEO, or not a, that's who they are. And they're looking at something really catastrophic for them that could be. I'm not saying this is definitely happening, but I'm saying that threat is real, that threat is very real. And that's why I see such a visceral reaction from them, that I believe is entirely understandable. To your point, I don't think it has to be over for them. I do think that if they can understand, okay, this is existential, explain it to the lawyers, explain it, get the lobbyists to go all in and try to pivot and with hemp and then appeal to Washington saying, look, you legalized it. We're 90% of the way there. We've got another 10% of the way to go. Let's close this gap. They've got the branding, they've got the infrastructure. I do think that there is survival available for them. I don't I'm this is the probably one of the biggest misconceptions. I'm not anti anyone really in the cannabis industry. I'm not anti MSO. I'm not anti small guy. I tell the small guys you got to get along with the MSOs. I tell the MSOs you need the small batch guys because you need their products because their products, I'm sorry, they're superior to yours. But you've got the distribution and the branding that they'll never have. And so we could work together in a really cohesive, thriving market if we put aside a little bit of ego and there's no one in this industry, myself included, that has come out of this unscathed. No one in this is winning like without sleepless nights. Okay. This is absolutely turning everyone's hair gray. So that's why I'm saying, okay, if we're all at this, why can't we kind of come together? I do think that it's still possible. And I think that some are going to go down swinging, some are going to fight, some are going to say, no, this, we've had it this way and we're going to keep it this way. But I think others are going to dive in and see, because that's what we're seeing the small guys do. I quite literally talked to someone who said my company's going into receivership and now we're looking at going into hemp. So I mean, what are you going to do with that other than look at what your options are? Like look at what the realities are and try to work with the realities of what you have. I mean, that's the name of the game of being an entrepreneur, is you get everything thrown at you that you possibly couldn't imagine. That's why Elon Musk said it's staring into the abyss and chewing glass. That's what you're doing when you're out here. And so you got to pivot, you got to be adaptable. So I hope that may help shed some, just an emotional light of why they're having a hard time with this whole hemp thing.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you saying that. And it's like, I feel like sometimes I'm caught in the crossfire personally because I do advocate for what I see to be the good things of hemp. And I've been known to point out some of the things that I don't like about what people call Cannabis Generation 2.0, this limited license, highly regulated market. But at the end of the day, like, I know if we all sat down at the table, especially the people that like seem to just like hate me on social media because of my stances on hemp. I, what's crazy is that I do believe we agree on more than we disagree on. And like you say,
Yeah.
most of the disagreements come down to like economic self-interest and everything else. And honestly, like the other reason I really appreciate you saying this is because I am like so exhausted on this topic, this debate. Like it's for the first time, I just released like an episode the other day, but for the first time I've taken like a 2 week break from my show. Like I'm just like I'm tired of arguing and debating with people that I know that I agree with, but because of like other things in their life or because of their investments, whatever it may be, like you say, there's a lot of different reasons that make people feel the way they do. We're seemingly disagreeing, and I'm just like, it's weird because we both have the same end goal. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is a lot of times whenever I'm talking about what I talk about online, people will send me like a picture of some like random sketchy looking vape or some sketchy product and they're like, this is what you want. It's like, when have I ever said or anybody ever said that this is what they want? And I also think it's funny, like whenever they point out products like that, like sketchy products that personally I would never buy, and any informed cannabis consumer, like I remember the first time I walked into a hemp shop and I saw THCA, and like you said, there was like a period of time when people were like working at the kinks, I feel like, and
Yeah.
figuring it out. And now there's like some really high quality THCA. But my point is, the first time I went in and looked at it, I was like, I'm not buying that shit. And I just
Yeah.
like, so on one hand, I'm not standing up for those products. But on the other hand, I don't think like any cannabis consumer is being duped or forced into consuming those products, right? Like it
No.
just seems like a a slippery slope argument when people bring up those types of products, you know?
I think exactly. And so I gave you my personal experience of,
Yeah.
I wasn't duped, and I still was just going to the illicit market because that's what I had to do. But on a professional side, one of my star cases, and we're getting there, but we've been able to work with one particular hemp operator who's, I dare say, one of my favorite clients, and just a great human. Um, when we first started working together, they just didn't have the guidelines. They didn't know basically what to do. And so we came in and helped them with their SOPs. We helped them understand not only the science, but we helped say, okay, this is actually naturally occurring. This is synthetically derived. We don't have enough evidence to say that synthetically derived is safe for consumption. So from our platform standpoint, we don't color code or grade synthetics, and so we've had, and because we say that, we say, we don't promote those with them. We've had customers voluntarily sunset their synthetic products and go all natural. And again, it's with guidance. It's with treating them with respect and dignity, not like they're criminals coming in trying to cheat you. That's not been my experience. I've met one somewhat sketchy actor and I've worked with, and I've been working now with quite a bit, and I've met plenty of sketchy actors in cannabis. Let's be honest. On the other side too. So neither industry is without sketchy operators, right? But by and large, just like on the cannabis side, these are normal, very, good people just trying to run a business. And so they need some guidance, they need some help. And that's why when they say we want regulation, they mean it. When they say they want guidance, most of them mean it. And the ones that are good actors, the ones that you would actually want to buy their products from, they want to do right by the consumer. So it seems very like a no-brainer, but this isn't a logical argument. This is an emotional argument.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I say, it's really been weighing on me lately because honestly, the question I've been wondering, and deep in my heart, I don't feel that this is the case on this subject, but I reserve the possibility that I reserve the fact that this may be a possibility. Lately, I've been wondering, like, am I wrong?
What a wonderful thing to contemplate. What a wonderful thing to contemplate. I believe everyone should contemplate that question
Yeah.
on a regular basis. Am I wrong? And to assess that with evidence, to assess that with fact. It doesn't mean that you are disregarding feeling. I think that feelings are guides to evidence and fact, but they in themselves are not evidence and fact. And so I think that's a tremendous question to ask yourself. Are you right? And the honest answer is you're probably a little right and a little wrong. You probably got some right and you got some wrong, just like most people. I have yet to meet someone that's got it all right. But if I can give you I'll give you what I go by. What's my North Star? Okay. First off, I am a devout Christian. So that is my North Star. So I do have that as my moral apparatus and guidelines. And with that, I say, okay, the people come first. I have to serve the people that can, and serve in healing and protect in the can who comes first, the people that need it the most, the people that are sick. And because those are the people that are seeking out cannabis. So that's my guiding North Star, is what is best for the people that are needing cannabis. And, for better or worse, I am one of those people. Now, I've learned over time to not take my own experience and project it out and say that's everyone's experience. But it does give me at least the perspective of someone that needs this plant, needs access to it, and it makes their life better. And so when I talk to other people, because that's my orientation, what's good for you, and they tell me this is good for me, And I believe them. I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. I believe in trusting people until people give you a reason not to trust them. I believe in good faith conversations. And again, dignity, respect. You'll see these are consistent themes and trends. And so that's what's led me into the hemp market. Like I said, I did not go there professionally until I would buy those products myself and use those products myself and do it and it be better than what I could find in something that I would endorse for other consumers. Would I recommend this to my grandmother? Would I recommend this to my friend? And it may not be perfect because I'm not going to always be right, but it's been at least a good enough guiding North Star that I'm serving other people besides myself, but at least I can have my own perspective that can help me do that. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And another thought I've been kicking around lately with regard to this topic, like, am I being too idealistic? Am I being too like pure, like trying to be too pure on the issue? And by that I mean, again, these I've been complaining about the limitations of cannabis legalization for a while. I use the example of the purchase limits. I use the example of like, why are we limited on the number of plants we can grow? Or why in states like Illinois can you not grow unless you have a medical card? Like, it seems weird that the Illinois Department of Public Health issues me a card and that gives me the right to cultivate a plant. Like, I can't think of another, like an analog for that. But I also wonder again with these thoughts, like, am I being too idealistic? Like, are people truly not ready for the legalization that I have in mind? And I go back and forth on this because on one hand, you hear all the time now about, just for a lack of a better term, like people like wine moms or just normal people. I don't even mean to make it about a
Yeah.
specific group, but just normal people. They go through their like Total Wine or whatever store and they see like, oh, this product has a little bit of cannabis in it, and they end up trying it, where those people normally don't just like stop by a dispensary or something like that. And so, like I say, I kind of go back and forth on that. I'm wondering, like, was this all just like too much too quick, like having weed at every corner store? Like, were people like truly not prepared for that? Do they need this like controlled phase in where like, hey, there's only a few dispensaries and you can only buy a small amount, don't freak out, it's going to be okay? Like, again, I like wonder, while I've always thought that this would be a cool thing, and all of a sudden hemp made it a real thing. It like brought some of these I don't mean to say crazy thoughts that I had, but they felt crazy at the time. Like, why can't we get a cannabis drink at the movie theater or at our local corner store or whatever else? And all of a sudden, boom, we can. And it's like, I just, like I said, I just don't, I get confused sometimes how we aren't like applauding this and people are actually, and again, it just makes me wonder, like, am I like too radical? Are these ideas like, were people not ready for them? And I'm not trying to like act like I was like ahead of the curve, because I was inspired by other people to share these ideas and talk about these ideas. I'm not acting like I came up with these ideas. But again, I just wonder, like, yeah, am I too idealistic with this subject? Like,
Your humility and introspection does you a tremendous credit. It's truly admirable. If you're asking rhetorically, I apologize because I'm about to comment.
no,
um, that
I'm asking because it's just been weighing on
I
me,
don't
you know?
believe personally. Again, I'm going to emphasize it's more important that you're asking the question than you being right, because by asking the question, you're going to get closer to being closer to the truth than anything than going just on your pure opinions, feelings, intuitions alone. So that's what I mean. I'm not flattering you. I'm saying that it's the path to actually discovering what is the truth, answering that question. And so I think to go a step, I'm going to go back to the guiding star here of and ask, kind of answer the question with who is doing the complaining? Is it too much for who? So from my perspective, at least what I'm seeing, it's not too much for the consumers. The consumers are actually quite happy with it. It's not too much even for the prohibitionists, because 90% of Americans wanted to see it in some form of, at least medically legal, and over the majority wanted to see it legal, and at least not gone after, not being prosecuted. They don't want to see DEA legal resources being devoted away from fentanyl and meth towards cannabis. That's a pretty consensus view among even law enforcement and again the public. So again, you have to ask yourself, who is this movement too quickly for? Who's this happening too quickly for? And I think that we're going to see how this plays out in the States. We're going to see how it plays out in Texas. My personal opinion on Texas, I'm not super close. I mean, I'm watching it. I'm close to the situation as I can be, as being a North Carolinian. But I am seeing that the House has its own bill, its own version, and it's far less punitive. It regulates the hemp market. It doesn't shut it down. And that's the bill that the hemp market wants. So from my opinion, I think it's going to face some serious difficulty. We are not doing great economically. A lot of people are really stretched right now. So eliminating 50,000 jobs in an $8 billion market, no matter how scary and how forceful they try to sound with their press releases and all of this, it's going to be very, very feasibly difficult, because we're in a very populist environment right now. And you're talking about elected officials risking their seat over an unpopular view that's going to cost real jobs. So I think there's going to be a lot of political posturing, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to get regulated, not shut down. And I think we're going to see that more and more. I think we're going to see regulation versus getting shut down with hemp. And I think that that with that, it's going to, again, who's going to complain the most in that is the person that has the most to lose in that. And the person that has the most to lose to that is the one that's going to be invested very, very heavily in the state regulated side. So when you say, okay, is this wrong? It just comes down to a matter of, okay, you can get real philosophical here, but you can have empathy, but you're going, okay, the consumers are here, cannabis is here. You said you got into this. Did you take this? Like, there's risk involved. I think you can still have empathy, but still saying that if the consumer wins, if the consumers are winning at the end of the day, I don't think you're being idealistic. I don't think you're being, if people were picketing in the streets, right? If consumers were picketing in the streets and going, shut this down, my kids are going to get high, all of that, and you really saw major out like backlash, then possibly this would be too fast. But we're just not seeing that. We're seeing the backlash from the same people that were backlashing against state regulated programs and combined with state regulated operators. But we're not seeing the backlash from the people.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's watch just a short clip from the Texas Lieutenant Governor's press conference. This is just a short moment. It's not exactly what you referenced earlier, but it's in the same spirit of a statement that was made. And I believe this is a sheriff that's about to make this statement. So let's watch the video.
And listen, I stand here shoulder to shoulder with these guys because of the evil that is trying to be defeated. I want to make it clear that good men and women were trying to do some things when they had marijuana become a medical product. And we are not against compassionate use or medical marijuana. But what we are against is this evil that has come out of the dark room of the same place. And
so I'll just stop it there. The evil
that has come out of has come out of the dark room. It's a very colorful rhetoric, very emotionally charged rhetoric. Where is your facts? Remember what I said earlier about emotions can guide you to facts, but the emotions are not facts in and of themselves. So there's good and evil in this world. I'm not going to dispute that. I'm not one of those people that says good and evil doesn't exist. But if you're talking about the evil because the cannabis industry became something that you didn't anticipate, but you've tried to control, again, I would encourage them to have as much self-reflection and introspection as you do, Cole. Are we wrong? Is that something that they've ever asked themselves? And again, but this is where I trying to have the empathetic, compassionate kind of view to this is going, I don't think that they've heard, I don't think they know. It's more out of ignorance. There's Hanlon's razor, never mistake for malice what can be adequately explained by stupidity. And so I think this is far more out of ignorance. I don't think that these people understand that someone like me with clear medical benefit, need and benefit, is getting served by this market. I don't think that they understand that that's happening. I don't think they understand that that's the connection being made, because you can't say that that's evil. That in and of itself is not evil. And so this needs to have more nuance. It needs to have more logic, more facts, more evidence, and not just emotional, heated rhetoric. But and again, because it's so, again, emotionally heated and rhetoric, and in that vein, but go up against the polls. I think they're trying to change the poll. Like, we'll see what happens, but still the polls say, just regulate the market. Don't shut it down. No one's asking for a THC ban. So they might have to show their rhetoric, like they might have to show their emotion, show their outrage for their constituents, for what they're doing. But I think when rubber meets the road, I think they're going to have a really hard time shutting down that market. And I will be full. Obviously, I don't want it shut down. Yeah, that's my fault. Just, someone's like, Livy, you're biased. You don't want it shut down. No, I don't. I don't want that shut down. Why would I want 50,000 people put out of a job that they're getting paid for, paying taxes on? And why would I want however many, hundreds of thousands, how many people are supporting an $8 billion market, cut them all off from access of their product, of their medicine? Why would I want to do that? Why would you want to do that if that's what you want to do? Why would you not want to make it safer, make it, again, more dignified, more respectable, and clear rules that are enforceable? Why would you not want to do that if your real motivation was to get the plant to the people? And I think this is a big come to Jesus moment for a lot of people, because I think a lot of people want to make money and they want to feel good about it. There's nothing wrong with that per se, except you got to know what your priorities are. If your priorities are making money, there are going to be times when you don't feel good about it. And those a lot of times are jerk people. But then there's other people that want to feel good and they want to do something good. And if they do something well, they'll make money. The money will be a byproduct. And so I think people are just having, again, some kind of existential come to Jesus moments of saying, am I in this for the reasons why I say I'm in this?
Yeah. Yeah. And, the people that seem to complain the loudest about, these synthetic products and kids getting products and the dangers of these, again, synthetic products, it would seem to me, like you kind of alluded to, that it would be in their best interest to support tighter regulation, not bans, to weed out, pun intended, those operators. And I just feel like by not doing that, or if you're calling for bans, you're pretty much causing the problem that you seem to be concerned about.
Yes. I mean, that's they don't have the resources for a ban. This is also the hardcore facts. I mean, they can try to ban. They've banned it in California, but they also complain that in California the enforcement is basically non-existent. The resources to enforce something like this are very, very difficult. But if you apply rules, right, if you apply clear rules and clear violators of those rules, and you're making taxes off of that to go after the rule violators, but the rule violators would be small enough that you could actually go after them. Now you've got enforceable rules.
Yeah. Yeah, and I was just looking for some of the rhetoric that I see online. I can probably show some examples. And look, like some of these examples that I'm about to show, I will preface with saying that I really like this show, or this person. They run a cannabis show, and I tune into it often. I think they have a lot of really good thoughts. We agree on a lot of things. And again, this kind of goes back to the point I started off with, where I feel like if we sat down at a table, we would agree on a more things than we would disagree on. And so you'll see posts like this. I'm a huge fan of Anthony Varell from the Dales Report, but he'll post things like this. For listeners, it's a picture of a quarter pound of cannabis flower, and it's being sold at $200 online. And Anthony says, "This is why we can't have nice things, period." And if I would have been shown this ad 10 years ago, 5 years ago, I'd be like, "You're telling me I can order a quarter pound online for $200? Hell yeah. That's the future I want to live in."
Right.
What do you mean this is why we can't have nice things? And these are the things that I just don't understand. Like, I don't get it. Like, what's the problem with that? You know?
Yeah, I think from their, and I don't want to speak for Anthony. I too have respect for Anthony and what they're doing at the Dales Report, but I think from their perspective, if I can speculate on it, is that it wouldn't get through to regulators, and so regulators won't basically legalize marijuana or cannabis if this is out there, that they'll use this as the impetus to ban it all. Because this was the original argument, was that hemp is going to basically ruin it all for all of cannabis, and it's going to get everything shut down. But that's not what we're seeing. What we're seeing is that they're moving to regulate it more than shutting it down. So I think when you look at it from a political mechanic standpoint, you just have to think about the pragmatic realities of enforcement. Okay. And so this is one of the reasons why the illicit market isn't shut down, because they don't have the resources for the enforcement of that. They pick off one person here, they get off, they do a bust there, but usually now it's tied in with, if you have illegal guns, or if you have fentanyl, or you have other drugs, like they don't go after just pure cannabis people. There's just not the impetus for that. It's not killing people. So when I think that the cannabis mindset is still stuck in, let's get it legalized, and that's a very uphill battle. That's a very difficult, just from a pure, again, kinetic standpoint, that's very physically difficult. Whereas it's much more politically, again, mechanistically speaking, to say it's already here, let's regulate it. You don't have to approve it. You don't even have to like it, but it's easy. It's a much easier lift from a politician standpoint to be like, okay, yeah, let's just regulate it. And so I think that's where they're really going to come to hard terms with. And this is also what I'm hearing from lobbyists. Lobbyists are echoing this. They're echoing that it's much harder to get the politicians on board with legalizing at the state level a federally illegal product, but it's easier to get them on board with regulating a federally legal product. I mean, it doesn't make that, like, to some of us, we're like, that's insane. But to a politician that's looking at 100 bills or going through a myriad of different issues, you can see why the lift is just so much easier to just regulate something that already exists than to try to get them on board to create something that in their mind doesn't exist, and to allow it to exist and go like, I don't know what'll happen if it goes through, right? Like, there's so many unknowns, as opposed to going, this is here. Your state hasn't burned down. No one's dying. let's regulate it to make it safer, to make sure the kids don't get it. And with synthetics, again, I've said, not crazy. I don't like synthetics. I don't like they're on the market, but I don't think a ban. I've been thinking, I've gone back and forth on this. Do we need to ban synthetics or not? And after talking with a lot of people, it seems like the compromise is you have to clearly label that this has been altered, that this is a synthetic product, that this is not a naturally occurring product, and that the consumer gets to make an informed decision. That seems to be what people think is the most politically feasible to get through. Now, again, that is going to enrage cannabis, but they're still thinking in their mindset of getting it through and not seeing kind of what's happening without their consent.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I say, just interesting. And in the spirit of fairness, I'll show another. It might not seem completely fair, but I promise it's me trying to be fair. Anthony said, it looks like my screen's a little blurry. I hope you're able to see it. Yeah, it looks like it's a little blurry, but I'll read it in case you are having trouble seeing it. He was making this comment about Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. He said, this man did not pull a single punch. These are all haymakers that he's throwing. So that's the part that might seem like I'm being unfair, bringing up what he said again. But he will say, and this is what I respect about Anthony, some make a ton of sense, but some are factually false.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony, I've seen him stand up for hemp on the show and stuff. But then, it gets back to this. But his point of, well, we have over 8,000 locations in this state selling this stuff shows how much this has spiraled out of control. And I don't see how that is an indicator of anything spiraling out of control, but maybe that goes back to the point you were just making.
They're stuck in and I'm trying to say this with utmost respect, but it's being stuck in a paradigm of control, of going, this must be controlled because it's the only way we'll get it passed, we'll get it legalized. And so that's been the mindset. That's been the modus operandi. And it makes sense until you did no one saw this coming. And this was not intentionally done. So that's a big thing out there. They're like, oh, this was intentionally. No, it was not. I can tell you with certainty, this was not done intentionally. They didn't know what they were doing. They had no idea this was going to happen. So no one saw this actually coming. This was a natural market kind of organic progression that happened according to demand.
I don't want to cut you off here, but I love this little conspiracy theory that I don't know if we just cooked it up on this show or where I heard this first, but I love the idea that, to your point, yes, I agree. Mitch McConnell did not intend, and most of the people that spoke about this, they didn't intend for this to be the outcome. But my favorite conspiracy theory, and this is meant to be a little funny, but I think there's a little bit of truth to every joke too. I think there was somebody in the room that actually wrote the language, because again, Mitch McConnell I always say he didn't write the farm bill by candlelight. Like lobbyists and other people, policymakers write these laws for the lawmakers, and they just kind of put their stamp of approval on it. So, like, while I agree with you, the lawmakers didn't intend for this. It wasn't like Mitch McConnell was like, "Hey, we're gonna actually legalize weed." I think there was somebody in the room, and again, this is meant to be sort of funny, but also I think there's some truth to this. I think there was somebody in the room that was like, "If we all just shut the fuck up, they will sign this into law, and it will legalize weed because of the way that it's written with Delta 9." You know what I mean?
I wish. I do think it's funny, and I do see what I do not want to be that person that puts on the glasses and goes, well, actually, I'll just say this without saying names and I spoke to the person who is responsible for talking to Mitch McConnell about getting certain language in the bill. He did not know this was going to happen. This was not that's at least one person. And again, there's to your point, There's multiple people. So to your tinfoil hat conspiracy, there still could be someone because there's more than one person writing on a bill. But just
Right.
from all of the evidence that I've seen, this wasn't intentional, but it is what happened. And now, in the spirit of comedy, I have also said that I think that we should be solidifying Mitch McConnell's record here by thanking him for legalizing cannabis and being the man to do it. And that should be his legacy, and that we should all give him a giant thank you for legalizing cannabis. And some people understand that joke, and some people are like, what are you talking about? And I'm like,
Right.
First of all, I'm just being completely satirical here. But
it
yeah,
does seem
so
insane, though, that, you know,
it
with the
is.
2014 version, it was very clear, like they even called it industrial hemp. But then in 2018, they dropped that term and then added a host of consumable cannabinoids, including the acids, which of course that's where THCA comes into play, and all the extracts and everything else. And it's like, if the, you know, everybody says hemp is rope, not dope. It's like, okay, I get that idea, but like, then why did they add consumable cannabinoids to the 2018 Farm Bill?
A lot of it had to do around Charlotte Figgy.
Mm.
A lot of it had to do with Charlotte Figgy and CBD and Charlotte's Web. And a lot of it was also in the economics of it, the economic explanations. But it was intended that you were able to have full spectrum, because that was the advice of the experts, was to allow for a full spectrum of the plant so that you could capture the majority of all of the chemicals, and that produced the most efficacious effect. So that was, from the best of my knowledge, that's one of the biggest reasons for that was again Charlotte. So I get what, in my experience, it's shocking how little people actually know outside their own fields. And they weren't consulting the best of the best here, from what I understand. Again, this is my limited knowledge. I wasn't in the room. I don't know everyone that was in the room, you know, so please take this with a grain of salt. I'm not claiming to be an oracle here, but just from what I'm seeing, but also to that effect, those same people are going, well, you know what, this wasn't what we intended, but what we do think, but they do think that cannabis people should be treated with respect. And so it is kind of going, you know, and so, hey, the guy, you know, there's all sorts of things that we could spin out of this. I tend to like simple answers because they tend to be accurate. And I have a very fantastical mind, so I can go on. I love posting. My friends call me an encyclopedia of conspiracy theories, because I used to be able to just rattle them off because they fascinate me. But when it comes to this, I do think there are conspiracies in cannabis. Unfortunately, I just don't think this was one of them. I think this was one of those just really ironic. I think Elon Musk actually said it better than anyone else when he said the most entertaining and ironic outcome will be the most likely outcome. And I think that explains this scenario a little bit better than tinfoil hat.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, just to spin it in a different direction, it's not like when the smartphone was created, they were like, we'll create the smartphone and that will destroy the taxi industry because people will be able to hail cars from their smartphone. It's like, no, the smartphone was like meant for communication first and foremost. And then, of course, hailing rides became a thing. I know that analogy is a little tired, or it's used a lot in this conversation. But to your point, I thought that was a pretty interesting quote. The idea that the most absurd outcome is most likely, and it's not even like necessarily intentional, you know?
Right. It's like, yeah, this is what happened. This is the absurdity of it. And why I tend to think that is more, again, why I think it was more an organic, natural thing, again, is me being a consumer. I started playing around. So I immediately started buying CBD as soon as it was legal because I like CBD. So I was, again, in the hemp market. And then in 2020, that's when we saw Delta 8 come out. We'd buy some Delta 8 vapes and some gummies. Actually, I have to admit, I like Delta 8 gummies better than Delta 9 gummies. I'm sorry, I have to say it. I can find better dosing. I get a better experience. This is something my husband and I have because he's a very all natural guy, and he's like, you don't know what it's doing. I'm like, I don't know why. I just like them. But so we tried around with that. I tried like I said, the HHC, THCP. I tried all of that. It only took me once, and then never again, because I said, this is terrible. And then the THCA. So why I think that's evidence of a market trying to figure it out. And then I talked to an operator who got in the game, and he got in the CBD game, and he rode that first wave and then the decline. And then he got into Delta 8. And he said he just kind of like spurted by, didn't really do great with Delta 8. And then THCA came around and he exploded, and everything went really. So that's matching also my experience as a consumer, which again is suggesting something very organic.
Yeah. Well, I didn't plan to make this a show where we show a bunch of things from the Dales report, but I do have one other thing that I read. Actually, again, written by Anthony, and he wrote about the Texas situation, displaying it on my screen right now. He's saying prohibitionists are ramping in Texas. And I just thought this perspective was interesting. He says, it seems the clamps are coming down on hemp in key states, with Texas and Florida leading the charge. Makes you wonder, could this be a top-down maneuver to clear the path for broader cannabis reform later on? He says, while I don't wish to see the total demise of the hemp industry, and he put in parentheses, plenty of good actors run clean businesses, banning hemp could end up giving state-run cannabis operations a nice little revenue boost in the near future. I think this kind of goes back to the point we started off with, where it's like, it's easy sometimes, I think, to call people that are calling for hemp bans prohibitionists. And, I might have even done that in the past. But it's crazy because it's like everything else in life. It's nuanced. And they're not necessarily calling for prohibition. They just see, like you were saying earlier, this tightly regulated model as being the only path forward. One thing, again, not to keep picking on Anthony, that I always see him say is like, we can keep hemp, but it should just be low dosed hemp beverages and edibles. And I'm like, why does it have to be low dose? Again, as a fan of the 50 milligrams, some people say that's a crazy dose. And it's like, why does it have to be limited to 5 and 10? And I think it just goes back to, like you were saying earlier, they see these limitations, these guardrails, some of the things that we might look at as arbitrary or silly, as being the only sustainable way to, like run a cannabis business. But I could be wrong. I'm speculating, I could be wrong.
And that's fair. And I don't, and I appreciate that. I'll only say, not from, again, I won't speak for Anthony because I don't know what he's thinking in there, but I can just from my background in Wall Street, to take it for what it's worth, is that the regulated control side of things allows people to plan. Money likes to go to planned things. Money likes to go to things that are safe. That's where money gravitates to. So if you have a very chaotic and unsafe industry like cannabis, that is a very safe place for money to go. And so I can understand, again, that framework, that mindset. But then what I would challenge anyone with that mindset is, I would say, okay, has it actually worked? And what we mean by worked, has it replaced the illicit market? Are consumers getting what they need? And if they are getting what they need, then it would have replaced the illicit market. And is our economies doing well as a result of it? And are the businesses doing well as a result of this? And so when we look at the evidence, like let's look at California. I do like looking at states with unlimited licenses and that have to battle out that have these super overregulated markets and everything, and look at them. So what's very interesting with California is a fascinating case, because when California first legalized in 96 with medical, their medical program was actually very similar to how hemp is now. It was deli style. You didn't have the IDs. You didn't have seed to sale. Like, it was actually very loosely regulated. And you saw roughly 6,000 cannabis stores open up, and they didn't have a problem of unregulated, because the barrier was so low, the bar was so low, that everyone was like, yeah, I'd rather be in the legal, I don't want the hassle of all of this. So they went into that. And then when they passed adult use rec, that wrecked the market. That destroyed their market. Now it went from 6,000 to 2,000. And they're now facing an existential crisis, with California looking at adding on another excise tax on top of an already completely dissipating market. So what they did, so a lot of them went back to the illicit market, and then they went and got used to licenses and started selling it as hemp. And these are people that went legal, right? They were illegal, then they went legal, then they went back. Like, so we know what happened. Like, this is no longer hypothetical. This is no longer a question of, okay, this is the only way. You presented that way. Does it work? And in Florida, for example, does their model work? I'm going to argue it doesn't. Why? I just learned of a patient, a cancer survivor, who cannot find her RSO oil, cannot find proper RSO oil in Florida, which is supposed to be a medical state. She can't find it, so she's having to order it from Oregon and pay $1,500 a month for it. That's absurd. That's insane. And that is also not uncommon. What we see happen is that when we do the medical, then rec, what ends up happening is, as soon as you get the whiff of rec, all of the actual medical programs and medical products disappear. So like the type 3s, the 1-to-1s, the RSOs, all of those products disappear, and the medical patients are left in the lurch. And that is roughly 10% of your market. That's a huge market there. And you're not thinking about them at all. And so in these vertically integrated models, they're not designed for competition. And it's not designed to innovate. It's designed to capture and protect your moat. That's the design. And so again, my North Star is what is best for that cancer patient. What is best for that mom? What is best for that what can they get the product that's working for them? That's what I'm concerned with. That's what guides me in regulation. That's what guides me in our profession. So we do have we have two kind of internal, we've got like an internal motto, and then you could say it's a mission statement or whatever, but we do say it very frequently. So our internal motto is honor the granny. So it's, can your granny understand it? Can she buy her cannabis nice and well? So it's honor the granny. And then our second is that we care for the people, we respect the plant, we validate the industry. And that's our, you could say that's our guiding star. So everything we do has to care for the people, and the people that we prioritize are the consumers and the patients. They come first. So we care for the people. We respect the plant for what it is, good and bad. We don't look at cannabis as just, again, this cure-all, that it's completely harmless. And when I mean that not everyone's going to have a great effect. It's not for everyone. It's going to create anxiety for some people. It's going to have some negative side effects with it for some people, and they're not going to like it. Okay. So we respect the plant. But if we do that, then we also get to validate the industry as a reputable industry that deserves, again, respect and dignity. And so that's our internal ethos, if you will, of what guides us, and again, in everything that we do, from regulatory thinking to business practices.
Yeah, you were making me think, and I want to give you the last word on this. I was also trying to pull up a clip. You were talking about how, some of this is, some of these policies are because, you know, when you come from a finance background, you're looking for like forecastable figures, right? And so the example you gave was, or one of the things that made me think of this was deli style and the disappearance of that. And I remember one time I went to a like cannabis business conference and the topic of deli style came up. And of course, again, this is a cannabis business conference. I'm there as a consumer. I'm not in the industry, have no plans to be in the industry. And I just like to consume the plant. And I heard them talking about deli style versus the CPG model. It was a panel, and I was like, oh, I want to listen to this. And I sat down, and they were just like, from my perspective, dogging on deli style or being very critical of deli style. But to your point, the case they made, because some people might wonder, like, we've purchased cannabis deli style for, I think, as long as we've been purchasing cannabis. And in case people don't know what I mean, by deli style, I mean like in a jar where like maybe you can smell it, you can definitely see it, they weigh it out in front of you. Um, and I just want to be clear, some people, when I say that this deli style, some people that are critics, they're like, I don't want people shoving their face in a jar of weed that I'm going to buy. I think there's a smart way to do deli style, and it's having like a sample jar that you smell out of, you can
Yeah.
see, and then they go and get it out of the big jar for you. Setting that aside, back to your point about forecastable outcomes, the case they made was that we like the CPG model because, you know, if you buy a pound of weed, by the time it gets to your dispensary, some of the water weight evaporates, so, and some of the plant material can just go into the air literally. I know it sounds crazy, but it happens. And so a pound that you may have bought ends up maybe being like a 0.9, you know, not a full pound. But then you also have like, I've gone to dispensaries in Michigan where literally somebody who's weighing out weed for me, they're putting nugs in a jar. Whoops, they drop the jar. It's all over the ground. They have to throw all that weed away. And this is liability on the operator that doesn't exist if you just pre-package it. You know, people buy your eighth, you know, it's not going to get lost on the way necessarily. Yes, it still may be shorter than an eighth, but let the consumer deal with that. The point is, you have these forecastable outcomes. And actually, I think this is a brilliant opportunity to play this clip. And then, like I said, I want to give you the closing word, but you just generate a lot of thoughts that I wanted to share, not only for yourself, but for my listeners. And I wanted to play this short clip of an interview I did with the CEO of Cresco Labs, one of the largest cannabis companies, I would say, in the nation, maybe the world. And I kind of asked Charlie Bachtel, the CEO of Cresco Labs, about limited license markets. And it adds up exactly with what you just said. Let's watch the clip.
Yeah, totally get that. And, you know, safety and kind of public opinion aside, another reason that I've heard operators kind of support this idea of limiting licenses is the idea to prevent price compression. Do you see that at all as a reason that you invest in those markets? Or?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I would say, you know, there's the respectable and responsible sort of requirements or the goals to try and achieve, which I think regulations help for. And then if you look at it from a purely economic basis, having some structure does allow you to create more forecastable and foreseeable events to occur. And again, I think it's really important, especially when a market launches. And then as time goes on, like we were big supporters of broadening the licensee base in Illinois after we.
So it was really the point that I wanted to listen to him make, is that idea of forecastable and foreseeable options. I think it's exactly what you were talking about earlier when you approach this from like a finance point of view. Like you want to be able to tell people, especially the people that are investing in you and like helping you become a successful business person, like this is what you'll get back out of it. And we can guarantee this through these forecasts.
Yes. And it's just the way that finance works. You got to put together a pitch deck. You got to forecast your revenues. You got to show how you're going to get there, your go-to-market strategy. You got to have all it, you know, and I'm saying this from look, I don't own a CPG business. Obviously I'm tech, right? So we've got a little bit different different operation there, but still it's all in the same vein. We still have to somewhat, we still have to forecast, and we still have to say how we're going to, get clients, and how we're going to raise the money, and or how we're going to project this and all of this. And here's what I can say, again, just personal experience and perspective, is that when I first got into this, I have the type of tendency, I am the type of person that likes to, I do like to very much plan. People have kind of laughed so I'm a horse, I ride horses, and or show and all of that. And when I go to a horse show, like I am so meticulously organized. I am so everything. So that even for the unforeseeable things, I'm prepared for all that I can prepare for. And so I completely understand that mindset. But when I came into business, I thought, I don't know what this structure needs to be, because this is brand new. No one knows what this needs to be. And I said that for my business. We actually started out as a nonprofit because we didn't know what we needed to be. We knew we had a problem and we wanted a solution. And we made it a very conscious and cognizant effort to say, we're not going to apply too much structure until we see what works. And then when we see what works, then we're going to come in and fortify that and build the moats around that and structure that. But we have to make sure that it works first, then add the structure. And so I think it was just, it's human nature to want predictability. It's human nature to want structure, especially in a world of chaos. But you're going into a new market. I think that I think it's a misstep to think, I think it's hubris. It's hubristic to think that you can apply structure right away before you know what works. And I think that was a major, major misstep that anyone could have made. So I'm not going to speak poorly or down on any of that, but I do think that it was a mistake of again, just trying to cart before the horse, putting structure in before you knew what worked.
Yeah, building the plane as it's in midair, all those sayings, right?
All the sayings, all the cliches.
Yeah.
But there's platitudes, but sometimes things become platitudes and cliches because there's truth in them. And so it's very scary. It is downright terrifying to go into completely uncharted territories with a loose plan. That's terrifying. You have to have that you have to have faith. Faith is required. Even Steve Jobs talked about this, that you cannot connect the dots going forward. You can only connect the dots going backwards. So you've got to have something bigger than what you can see, bigger than your structure, bigger than your material. You've got to have something that's guiding you. And like I said, so for me, that's faith. That's faith in what I'm doing, faith in obviously in God, but this is that missing element. And so if you don't have that faith, but you go in with just all control, that's going to come with a lot of hubris. And I'll give, since we started this with platitudes and cliches, I'll end with one, which is the pride does come before a fall. And so again, it's hubris, it's human nature to do this. I am guilty of being hubristic. I'm not speaking from a high horse here. I am not. I'm speaking from extraordinarily painful experiences, but just from those experiences gained a little bit of insight. And again, that's why I kind of applied it to what happened. Again, when I look at the cannabis industry, that you tried to put in structure before understanding the chaos and before understanding what structure would actually work to bring you out of that chaos. Because when you put structure in just for structure's sake, so that you can benefit off of it, you don't know if you're creating more chaos or less, because you don't understand the chaos you're in the first place. And so that's why I said you have to have courage and faith and know why you're in this, to go into the wilderness as it were, and to say, okay, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to allow for mistakes. I'm going to allow for us to learn. And then once we learn what works, that's when we bring in the structure. And so I think that we're in the structure phase now. I think we're starting to see what actually works. And that's why I say hemp showed us that structure. I love that you wrote that article. I'm going to go read it because I was looking about writing an article on that same vein. So I certainly want to read what you wrote, and if I do end up writing that article, I'll definitely send it over to you.
Yeah, please.
And probably be citing you because I'm sure that we'll have some very similar thoughts. But that's what I really believe that we're in. And again, I don't think it's too late for the big guys. And so I would like to end this with the word of hope and with a word of that the consumers are actually pretty forgiving people. You give them what they need, give them their products, give them what they're looking for. Don't try to take it away from them, and don't be short-sighted. Don't be so short-sighted. I know it's been tough. Like God knows this industry has absolutely wrecked so many people, but I do think that we're actually in the inning stretch here. And I think that if you can figure out how to survive. And if you can figure out how to adapt and how to go into this and serve your consumer, do it, because the market's not going away. The demand's not going away. It just might not look exactly how you thought it would look. Doesn't make you stupid, doesn't make you a terrible person, it makes you human. It makes you human. None of us saw this. This doesn't look how I thought it would look. Not at all. No, that's kind of my point. It doesn't look how anyone thought it would look, but this is how it is. So how do we understand it, and how do we navigate out of it so that we can all have something that we're all benefiting from? And I'm hoping that is a message that can resonate. And maybe I'm being a little idealistic, but I will never ever back down from trying to give some hope and encouragement.
Yeah. Well, hey, I just want to thank you for sitting down with me, for reaching out, and for being up to do this. I was really looking forward to this, and it was worth every moment. So thank you. And it sounded like that was, you said you wanted to end it on that note, but I just always try to give people the space. Anything else that you want to say before we go?
No, I think I did kind of
Cool.
close it all together, but I really appreciate it. And thank you. I've enjoyed your X post and you doing this podcast. And so keep it up. You're a needed voice. You are a needed voice. We need consumer voices. We need people out there just willing to say, willing to question, willing to poke a little bit, but you're very respectful. You're very kind. You're very level-headed. So keep doing what you're doing. It's needed. And I've always enjoyed reading it. So I thoroughly enjoy going to read the article too. I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you. And again, folks, if you want to read the article we're talking about, or check the episode out that I did with Charlie Bachtel, or follow Livy on Twitter or X, I guess, or go to their website. We'll have all of those links in the show notes. Once again, though, it's discoveryourcolor.co. Livy, thank you so much for joining me on this episode of
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo. The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memorandum.
The Cole Memo.
The Cole Memo is what allows this whole thing to go on.
I mean, you have to respect the memo.
Hey, this is Tommy Chong, and you're listening and watching The Cole Memo.